when tech first was getting integrated in Canada, you would see these like temporal testing times, right? So it would be like 6 months and 12 months, and it was only to do with return to sport. Not only could the practitioners not be agile and change programming and let that influence what they were doing, but like the data and insights, it's an opportunity for a conversation every time you test.
Welcome back to VALDCAST. We've got a really exciting episode here. We've got, one of the only second rounders on VALDCAST here. We have Travis Gaudet today. Obviously, Travis, you can give a very brief background to yourself in a bit, but just really excited because I think we got a couple topics that kind of go under the radar when we talk about rehabs and things like that. And so I'm just super pumped to have you on and just connect a little bit more. So obviously you've been on the VALDCAST previously, but would love to just kind of get a super brief background on who you are, what you do, and then we can go from there.
Sure. So I'm a physiotherapist from Canada, originally from the East Coast in Canada and from a little place called Prince Edward Island. And I moved out to the West Coast right after physio school. We own a performance rehab clinic out there, me and my business partner Taylor, called Orca Performance. Still treat a couple times a week. And besides that, just balancing business stuff. I have a clinic in Calgary, I have a clinic in Edmonton, and soon to be one on the East Coast. And that's eating up all our time these days. So,
And you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but have a pretty strong education arm within Orca as well, correct?
Yeah, we did. So about a year in, we launched Plint the Podium, which is one of our live events. And there was Canada's an interesting one when it comes to CPD. There was a lot of courses for needling and just different types of modalities and interventions, but nothing really that's strung together kind of mid and end stage rehab and some of the things that we felt like the institutions didn't touch on. So we created a course, 7 modules, and usually we just house it in Calgary, but this year we've decided to take it across Canada. So we have one in BC, one in Toronto, and then one going to the East Coast. And we've added in an ACL course as well since then. So we've kind of built out the educational side a little bit as well, which gives us a little bit more flexibility from a business sense. But yeah, it's been good.
Yeah, I mean, it's super cool to see everything that you guys have done. I mean, it's for those that are familiar with your guys' business or even familiar with Vald, it's not rare for us to know that you guys have been a part of Vald and have been here for a while. It's really cool just to kind of see your guys' development alongside the company's development too. Just in curiosity, what has been something that you guys have noticed when it comes to either system development or your own tech integration journey that either maybe goes under the radar a little bit and that people haven't really noticed when it comes to you guys picking up more tech, or just new things that you guys continually are looking forward to?
Yeah, I think so. We were an early adopter, I would say. Right after COVID, we got the Force Frame was the first piece of tech. There was not any, if maybe very few in Canada at the time when we picked it up. So we were kind of paving our way in the dark, figuring out how to integrate it from the start, and started to add a couple more pieces in as time went on. Well, I think what we've learned in the last 12 months is that with the current rate of technological change, and obviously there's clinics that are trying to keep up to just how to integrate, how to get an ROI, how to let this stuff help you get your outcomes. We've, in the last 12 months, kind of encountered a challenge where it's trying to create cohesion amongst our practitioners and also figuring out how to, with our leadership team, if a metric changes, let's say reactive strength index is 1.3, our benchmark, a new paper comes out 2 months later, now it's 1.4. How do we consistently let those changes in benchmarks trickle down to the team while not overwhelming them? You know what I mean? So we've actually had to go back to the drawing board a little bit and figure out what our innovation framework was going to look like. And we landed on kind of this once a quarter kind of cadence where we meet with our leadership team. We present our current systems, refine them, and present maybe new testing standards or a new tests we want to implement. And it goes through 2 iterations where we just smash it, figure out where the problems are, come up with solutions before it actually makes it down to our one-on-one care team.
Yeah.
So I think that's been the biggest thing in the last 12 months. We just hit lots of problems in terms of, just trying to create cohesion and standards with the tech that we do have.
Yeah. I mean, the industry as a whole and just research right now is constantly updating. There's new stuff coming out pretty much every day at this point. Do you guys feel like almost where my head comes in is, you periodize your learning the same way you'd periodize training? Are you guys focusing on a cluster of being for example, you used RSI as the example. Are you saying, okay, let's dive in this quarter or this half of a year, let's dive all in on force plates and like level up our force plate knowledge for the next 6 months, and then let's dive into maybe isometrics or things like that? Or how are you guys structuring
I
it?
think you have to, right? It's just like, it's really hard to consume the amount of research and information that's coming out. And I think like companies like Vald and other brands like Sportsmith and things like that, I think you start to turn to some companies that you know are trustworthy and put out good content and curate, the best practitioners from around the world. So I've gone from, ordering journals where I'm sifting through what article I'm going to read to kind of looking more towards individuals and then staying current with their research, whether it's foot and ankle or hip or knee. But yeah, I think you have to kind of go through. It's the same when you get out of physio school, right? It's like you realize very quickly what you don't know. So then you're trying to figure out, it's like, okay, I'm going to spend 3 months on the shoulder and then 3 months in the foot and ankle and then 3 months on the spine. And if you don't start to periodize, it's so easy early just to get overwhelmed by where to go and then just stay a generalist, right?
Gosh, no, I know it is tough. And, you feel like a lot of times people kind of place themselves somewhere on the continuum from generalists to specialists. And then recently you guys have done a really good job with maybe still seeing a wide array of individuals, but really kind of niching down a little bit on this kind of ACL pathway and becoming true experts in terms of not just tech integration, but just rehab as a whole. Something that I alluded to earlier that I think doesn't get enough of attention is this kind of gray area of the mid stages of ACL rehab. Maybe we just kind of kick things off by getting, there may not be a totally right or wrong, but getting your guys' definition of what is the mid stage of ACL, and maybe we just jump off from there.
Yeah, I think for me, a mid-stage athlete is they've hit the early non-negotiables, right? So they have their full extension, they have their recruitment back at the quad, they have no effusion or maybe a trace of effusion. They have their key lift patterns back, so their squat, their lunge, their hinge, all the different menu options you're going to need to add in at that strength stage are there. And for us, like, they have their capacity too. So from a body weight perspective, they do quite well with their single leg calf raise capacity, single leg glute bridge capacities there, single leg squat capacities there, and they're really ready to either move into like more aggressive hypertrophy work or kind of trace over into like the max strength kind of realm. And I think for like our archetypes are so variable at Orca that where that mid stage lands, it's not really like a temporal thing for us, right? And we get that question all the time when we're either mentoring or in our ACL course. It's like, well, okay, well, at what month are they mid-stage? And it's the same as return to sport, right? Where we start to take time out of it and we're looking more criteria-based. It's the same as they cross that realm from acute to mid, where there's certain criteria that need to be hit before they move into those key lift patterns. So for one of our athletes, it could be month 12, a week 12, and one of our athletes, it could be week 8.
Yeah,
right.
Totally. And maybe what could be helpful for some of the listeners is understanding how nuanced and how variable this could be. If we take, let's say, two different athletes, we have somebody, up in Canada, you guys are constantly seeing people that are more winter sport athletes. You take a hockey athlete, and then maybe we take somebody who's a little bit more of a court, volleyball, basketball, something like that.
Yeah.
When you think about that and you think mid-stage, and we're talking criteria specific indicators, what comes into your mind and what jumps into your head of like, okay, this is something that we want to make sure a volleyball athlete can hit rather than a hockey athlete?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities at mid-stage, right? Like there's certain, again, like menu items that need to be there. So for a mid-stage athlete, usually they're going into our strength capacity phase at that point. So our variables and programming are changing a little bit, but you're working on eccentric quadricep strength. It doesn't matter if they're a patellar graft or quad graft or hamstring graft, you're working on those qualities. You're starting to go over into eccentric rate of force development. If you don't, those things are going to show up in your vertical jump testing. It's not necessarily an explosiveness issue for them. It's the previous pillar that didn't get touched on, right? So we're making sure that stuff's there. I think our hockey athletes need similar strength qualities to what our court-based ones do. When you look at skating and you break it down, the extensors and the sagittal plane are massively important. Our volleyball or basketball athletes, the exact same thing. If they're decelerating on the court, they're landing from a jump. They need those same qualities. So I think you would walk through our gym and see probably 5 or 6 different sports looking very similar. I think where the nuance comes is as they transition, let's say this was month 3, once they hit month 5 and 6 and you start to move them into this chaos continuum, that's where you start to see different aspects, I think, come into play, right? So visual disruption is going to look a little bit different on the court than what it would on the ice. What they're doing in the frontal plane versus sagittal plane might look different. So I think that's where we start to kind of be a little bit more nuanced with selection, but there's a lot of similarities for sure.
And something we were chatting about right before the podcast that I always find super interesting is this idea of, anybody who's worked as either a physio or even in the strength and conditioning space where they're starting to the return to play standpoint, people understand rehab's anything but linear, right? You're going to hit a setback. Something's going to, not work out the way you think it will, both from a practitioner standpoint and from a patient standpoint. From your guys' perspective, after treating however many ACLs it's been at this point, or just treating however many patients, what are some ways in which you guys can either set expectations or get ahead of some of these setbacks before they become this sort of, all-encompassing, almost world-ending feeling that some patients start to get?
Yeah, I think it's communication is underpinning all of that, right? And I think that's what, as clinics look to integrate some of the technology and things into practice, it's the same problems that arise when tech wasn't there, right? It's people can retain clients or they can't, depending on how socially agile they are and how they are from a communication lens. So for us, it's just getting ahead of it and trying to create vision. And there's nothing precluding us in the first 2 weeks with the athlete starting to discuss what's going to happen in the next phase and create vision. And we're doing X, Y, and Z because when we hit here, this is what's going to happen, right? Or we can expect at month 4, you're probably going to start to get a little bit fatigued from a psychological perspective with the rehab process. And it's going to be difficult knowing that you're not even halfway there if you return to sports at 12 months. So I think by just having those conversations early and recurrently, it starts to make athletes a little bit more comfortable. You got to think too, like we see a lot of youth athletes. Some of these athletes had never been in the gym before.
Yeah.
Right. So like you look at what kind of stress that is on the psychological system where they're working out around other individuals and forget the fact that there's a fusion and they just had a big surgery. That can be taxing. That might disrupt their sleep. It's not all about the lifts and sport and things like that. These individuals are in junior high. They're in high school. We've both been there. We know what day-to-day was like in high school and junior high. There's other things that are going on for these kids. So I think it's knowing when to you lead being a practitioner with the end goal in mind, but I think you need to be agile enough to know when to be a human first and being able to actually like crumple up your plan for that session. And you may just need to sit there and talk to your athlete that day or pop into the recovery room on the boots with them and just have a chat about how their day went at school. And in the grand scheme of things, although physios, a lot of us are type A, we have our plan for the day. We want to execute our plan. But in the grand scheme of things, that might be more meaningful than, trying to carry through the session. And for a lot of our athletes, they go on, they're collegiate, they go on, they retire from sport. I think it's those little moments and being there to support them that really like makes your business and brand stick out. And it's a massive cultural piece. So again, I think communication underpins all of that.
Yeah. And you're so right. Sometimes you do need to kind of take that plan, put it to the side and just, talk human to human with people. I think having been individuals that if you have experienced sport and had that kind of an injury, you can very well understand the ups and downs. And it's one of those things too, where you can set as many expectations as you want at the very beginning and saying, hey, this is going to suck. Hey, there's going to be bad days and there's going to be good days. But until you're physically in it and you're actually experiencing it, it's, discussing something and experiencing something are two very different things.
Vastly different. And it's n equals 1 too, right? So it's like maybe you are a clinic that has, 100 active ACLs or something. And this individual's not even just first ACL, maybe first major injury.
Yeah.
We live at a place in Canada where like specialization in sport at a young age is becoming more and more prevalent. A lot of these kids aren't playing, they're not multi-sport athletes. And their entire sporting team is their social circle. So that gets taken from them. It's their first major injury. And all of a sudden, they can be in a very dark place psychologically. But I think that's why, for me, it's so important that we built the environment that we did, because they're not on a plinth or a bed for seeing their physio for 5 minutes, curtains drawn by themselves. They're in an environment where their friends are there. There's people at mid-stage that they can look to when they're acute. When they get to mid-stage, there's people returning to sport. They can always, and then again, they morph into that support person for the next line of athletes who are behind them too. So
Yeah. And it's true too. Like at some stage, you do have to get over some of the difficulties and the struggles. You can't necessarily have a pity party every day you come in.
Can't fill it there.
Exactly. And you can't. So maybe beyond the environmental expectations that you're kind of setting within the clinic itself, like you're alluding to, there are any, maybe data specific qualities or metrics that you can point to say, listen, you're feeling not that great today. I totally get that. But we tested either today or last week and you're actually looking a lot better. It's just we're continually moving the goalposts after each stage.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like when tech first was getting integrated in Canada, you would see these like temporal testing times, right? So it would be like 6 months and 12 months, and it was only to do with return to sport. And not only could the practitioners not be agile and change programming and let that influence what they were doing, but like the data and insights, it's an opportunity for a conversation every time you test, right? And that conversation could go a bunch of different directions with the athlete, but we use our insights to have certain conversations with the athlete. And we might preclude from talking about a number if it tanked because of a situation that we're in, and we know that the athlete's already in a deload and they're not doing well from a psychological standpoint, and maybe it's just not the right time to talk about that metric. Or like you alluded to, like sometimes we'll just use it to say, hey, last week we deloaded, you weren't in a great place. We said that, that's okay, that's expected, and don't beat yourself up about it. We lost a week in the grand scheme of things. It's not going to matter. We said, though, if we started to string those weeks together and they become months, now we're pushing your return to sport date. But what did you do? This week you came in, we retested your CMJ, your jump height and our SI mod is back up to where it is before. And now we go into the next phase. So yeah, you can bring in, reel them back using data. You can have conversations around fatigue. We've had individuals who their data tanks. We sit them down in the treatment room, we have a conversation, and they broke up with their partner 2 nights before and they haven't slept, and you know what I mean? And in that situation right away, we completely adjust what we have planned for the week.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I think, again, data is just an opportunity for conversations with these individuals. And that's the beauty about having a suite where you can test often, is that you can now be agile with what type of conversation you want to have. Do you want to have it around mobility? Do you want to have it around explosiveness or reactive strength? I think when you have one piece of kit, that your domains of conversation start to become a little bit more limited.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of like, as you get into a good monetary position and you get your ROI on whatever first device it is that you attain, that you start to work towards working with a company where you can now string multiple pieces together, show them one integrated surface where, again, your hub tells a story and you tie in whatever domain you want.
Yeah. It's amazing that you bring that up, because right before we hopped on here, you're in the process of creating an awesome resource for Vald and for Vald Academy. And there's the case that you were specifically talking about is really interesting, where, I'll let you tell the story more specifically, but about the Achilles patient that, numbers just weren't adding up.
Yeah.
Do you want to share just a little bit about kind of what led you to that and how that conversation started?
Yeah, so we're going to do a practical while we're down here at VALCon. We're also going to put it out on Vald Academy for a more condensed version for people to see. And one of the BDMs here had a history of Achilles rupture a year and a half ago. So we were looking for somebody with an injury. We were going to take his run, kind of decode it, and reverse engineer what could be leading to his mechanical issues, and then figure out where diagnostically where we're going to use the tech in there. And as we brought him through the process, he had some 5 or 6 like pretty clear glaring issues with his 10-meter fly, technically, and some were on the left, some were on the right, some on the upside, some not. And as we started to test him, everything that we thought was going to be positive was actually fine. So thoracic mobility, we thought he was going to be stiff as a board. He has like elite level thoracic mobility. His knee to wall, we're like, history of Achilles injury, probably knee to wall restriction, but probably the best ankle mobility I've ever seen in my life. So as we're going through our tests, we're just like, what is going on? Like, where is this coming from? It doesn't make sense. He looks really good from a strength perspective. Little do we find out about a half hour in that he had a history of a big toe fracture 16 years ago on his other side. So everything that we were seeing through propulsion and through touchdown makes complete sense now. And again, it was an Achilles rupture through a deceleration event. So now you start to talk with him a little bit about was this virus potentially here festering the entire time? And because of load or position or capacity, that's kind of the injury that happened. But these are the things that were going on behind the scenes, right? So I think that's the beauty part of it. It's always like a Rubik's Cube. I think it's why a lot of physios love what we do, is we love that problem solving piece. If we don't get that, it irritates me. I like that stimulation. That's why I don't get off table. I still treat a little bit too. But the tech, it just fixes your biases, right? Your confirmation biases. I could have went into that and been like, okay, I know X, Y, and Z is going to be the root of that. And the tech basically refutes it. And now all of a sudden you have to dive deeper and dive deeper.
It's so cool because it's one of those things where I think everybody hates to admit it, but at some point in your clinical development, there's going to be a stagnation process, right? We talked about periodizing your education at the beginning. At some point, you're going to hit a strength plateau. You're going to hit a performance plateau. Something's going to happen, and you're not going to either have that same fire. You're not going to learn or want to learn as much. And I think that's the beauty of having something that you can add to your repertoire of saying, okay, well, now this data is telling me that I'm wrong, even though I think I'm right. What I need to do something. And I think something that you guys do a really good job of at Orca is blending multiple models, right? Again, let's call a spade a spade. This is VALDCAST. We know that there's a large importance of objective testing technology and data, but there's also a whole other area that we can address when it comes to qualitative assessment and these sorts of things, and we compare the two. That's something I think you guys do a really good job of. Briefly, do you want to just kind of touch on where else are you guys getting some of the inspiration for these disciplines, and how are you combining that in with the tech that you guys are integrating?
Yeah, there's some giants whose shoulders we're standing on for sure. And I think without like certain people, there's probably too many to name, but like we wouldn't be able to create the systems, frameworks, and operations that we do at Orca. Really, they're the reason why, and the research they're putting out as to why we can do what we do up in Canada, right? So I think you touch on something interesting where it's, as the tech starts to become more prevalent in clinics, I think the pendulum in the rehab and performance space always swings way too far in either direction. And you see a lot more people shying away from things like coach's eye and taking a look at the biomechanical factors, which I think is so critical. So even during the practical in the Ballot Academy, like we start with coach's eye. We evaluate the running pattern in different planes. We make a kinogram, and then from there, we look at a problem list and then let that dictate what tech we're going to use and what tests we're going to do. It's not, we have this menu of tests because he's an Achilles. We use coach's eye first. That's what we're good at. We're supposed to be movement specialists, right? So yeah, I think that's like, it's just such a massive piece. And there's so many, like Dan Paff and Stu McMillan and the group at Altus are great when it comes to that. Alan Murdoch's obviously great. We turn to Endo's work a lot, and Romaine's work in the foot and ankle and the stuff he's been putting out in the last 2 years, I think is brilliant. So there's, again, some key people that we're looking at to help us, like point us in the right direction and help guide what we do. But yeah, I think you have to, otherwise you're scouring what is now tens of thousands of articles that are being littered through the service every week, right? So
yeah, Trav, thank you, dude. This has been such a cool conversation. Obviously this is being recorded at VALDCon. The energy here is super fun, and it's awesome after it's been years of us communicating back and forth and things, to finally sit down face to face and have conversations like this it's truly awesome. Anything that you guys have going on in the future or anything like that people can look for or reach out and learn more from you guys?
Yeah, 2025 has been a year for sure. We're taking Plint the Podium external, so we're coming to BC and Toronto in October. We're going to Halifax in November on the East Coast. We just kind of teased that we're bringing a third facility to the East Coast. We'll announce where soon enough. And we're opening up our Edmonton location in a couple weeks, moving from where we're at into a brand new facility. So there's lots happening behind the scenes. We're going to try, we've been approached quite a bit on social media for people who can't come to our live events about getting some more content online, and we're going to try. It's just, there's only so much time in the day right now. So yeah, you can find us on social media. We'll always be up to something. There'll be something coming out pretty much every couple months for us. So
amazing. Trav, thank you so much, man. We're pumped for everything you guys are doing, and just stoked that you guys are, along for the ride with Balls as well. It's been awesome to see the symbiotic growth between the two groups.
Sure. Thanks for having me here.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for listening to VALDCAST. please make sure to follow us on all social media platforms at Vald Performance and Vald Health. And we really look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks.